Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special episode of the Decaturish Twitch Show featuring the candidates running for the House District 90 seat in the state legislature. I'm your host, Decaturish editor and publisher Dan Wisenhunt. The February 9th race to fill House Seat District 90 of former State Representative Pam Stevenson. The February 9th race is to fill the House District 90 seat of former State Rep Pam Stevenson. House District 90 includes parts of DeKalb, Henry, and Rockdale counties. Qualifying for the race took place on December 16th through 18th. A runoff, if needed, will be held on March 9th, according to the Secretary of State's office. An advance in-person and absentee voting began on January the 19th. If you need to find out if you're in that district, if you need to look up your polling place, go to the Georgia Secretary of State My Voter page. Just Google that. You'll be able to find that information once you log on. The candidates joining us today are Greg Sheely, an entrepreneur. Greg, how are you?
Excellent. How are you doing?
Thank you, Greg. We have community activist Ed Williams. Ed, how are you today?
I'm great, Dan. How's everyone out there?
Can't complain. Good to see you. And Joel Thibodeau. Joel, how are you, sir? And you're an internal auditor as well. That's your profession. Joel, how are you? I can't hear you, Joel. You're on mute, my friend.
I'm great, Dan. Thanks for having us. Hello, everybody.
Hey, thanks for joining us. So we did reach out to every candidate who we could contact. There was one candidate we could not contact. The candidates were all given. We give everyone an extra 5 minutes to jump in the room. Whoever's here is here. If we can, we'll try to organize a different forum if that's possible. But given the time constraints, we're trying to move on as quickly as we can. Our candidates have not been given these questions in advance, and each candidate will be given approximately 2 minutes to respond to each question, and I will be keeping time. So if you go a little over, I may be like, okay, we have to move on. And we will also take some questions from the audience. So audience, if you're watching, we have about 13 people right now. What you're going to need to do is create a Twitch account, give our channel a follow, and then you can type your questions in the chat box there, and we can ask the candidates that. So my first question is we're gonna start with Greg. Greg, why do you think that you are the best candidate for this job?
Dan, thanks a lot for having me in hosting the forum. I think the reason why I think I'm the best candidate is because I've been there and I've done that, and I've been a part of this community for a long time. So one of the things I say is often we see politicians tout some of their accomplishments over a period of time. So we look at local municipalities, we look at state and federal, we look at some of the legislators and what they have brought into the district. Often we don't understand is there's someone behind it who's executing their goals and their vision. Often it's me, it's our company that has executed the visions of the municipality, the politician, the state, or the federal government. That's what we do. We do a lot of work in the community. We have worked in terms of DeKalb County. We have worked on over 400 houses for seniors, police officers, teachers, and the disabled. We have worked to retrofit their houses. We have worked to make it convenient for these people to stay in the community and to live in the community. I have worked in the school system, the DeKalb County school system, for 7 years before I became an entrepreneur. I have raised my family in District 90. I have 2 kids in DeKalb County school systems. And overall, I have done a lot. I have hired over 100 people and contractors in the 17 years that I have been in business. And let me say that again, over 100 people and contractors have worked for my company over the last 17 years. That's the reason why I'm for economic development, because I've seen the benefits of it for our community, and I'm for that. And I ask everyone out there.
I'm sorry, you can finish real quick, and then we got to move on.
If I ask everyone out there, if you're for economic development, if you're for a change in our community, I ask for you to vote Greg Sheely.
Mr. Williams, why do you think that you are the best candidate for this job?
Dan, I believe I'm the best candidate for this job because for the last 5 years, I've been working in the community in the interest of the people. This job that we're running for is a legislative position. It's a job where you write laws, and that these laws will impact people. For the last 5 years, I have been working in the community on behalf of the interests of the people. So the representative would be representing the people in our district. And I've been doing that for the last 5 years. I've not been working behind the scenes. I've not been building houses, but I've been out there at board meetings, at commission meetings, at city hall meetings, at the MARTA board meetings, at the Greater board meetings, at the ATL link meetings. I've been writing articles in newspapers about different things that the governments have been doing in our community. So I'm uniquely positioned and prepared to hold this position as a representative of the people. I've always acted in the interest of the people. I've fought 2 cases right now that are before the Georgia Supreme Court in the interest of the people. None of this is in my personal interest, but it was in the interest of the people. And I continue to do that to this day. Now, 5 years ago, I was one of the leaders against creating the city in South DeKalb. Now they want to create a city, break up the city of Stockbridge. And they're just recently today, they're talking about separating Buckhead from the city of Atlanta. Now, 5 years ago, I knew at that time what this would lead to, and it's happening before our eyes. We need to hold our current government accountable for what services it's supposed to provide to the people. And if you elect me as a legislator, I will make sure that the laws are set up where they protect the rights of the citizens, but also hold the elected officials and the county governments accountable to the people. And this is what I've been advocating for the last 5 years.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Thank you.
I'm not running.
Okay, I'll give you one more second.
I'm not running for this position for a title. I want to be a servant for the people.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Mr. Thibodeau, why do you think that you are the best candidate for this job?
Thanks for the question, Dan. I believe I'm the best candidate for this job quite simply because of my experience. I've been a resident of DeKalb County for over 32 years. I've raised my family here, raised 2 kids in DeKalb County schools. And I currently work for DeKalb County Schools as the director of our internal audits and compliance division. Every day, I protect whistleblowers inside our government. Every day, I root out any cases of malfeasance or fraud. And since there's not a whole lot of that really in our government, in our DeKalb County school system, it's really about making sure that the policies that we have are followed, that we are in compliance, and we deliver the most efficient government that we can. I spent time in the Georgia legislature working for the Senate Budget and Evaluation Office, helping to write the budget, my hands actually in it. Worked for the Senate Finance Committee, worked and put tax policy together in the 2012 Omnibus tax package. My hands actually in the legislation. I've built relationships there that I still have today. I spent 14 years in corporate, in financial planning and analysis with PG, and with 6 years of financial management with PGI, which was a startup in Atlanta that is now part of the Zoom network. So I have a lot of experience. I've worked and I'm active in my community. I'm one of the people who helped found the city of Stonecrest because we needed relief when our county government offered us no representation for almost 2 years in District 5. That was our answer to putting together a government that was responsive to us. And so it's all about the people and government that works for them. And so I want to represent us in District 90 to make sure that we tackle the apportionment question, to make sure we tackle the healthcare issue, to make sure that we tackle job creation and career development. And I ask for their vote.
Thank you, Mr. Thibodeau. I just want to point out that we have a great attendance for this show. We've got more than a dozen people watching right at this moment. That's some of the best numbers we've had for any given show at any given time. So compliments to you all for being interested in your local government and a local house race, because these local elections are the most important elections. So we really appreciate you joining us. Mr. Williams, we'll let you start this question. 2 minutes. What do you believe is the most important legislative priority for your community?
Most important legislative priority in the House District 90 community. I couldn't say there's just one. There are a lot of issues that we have that need to be addressed in our community. And crime is number one, along with healthcare as far as the COVID-19, and making sure that we have the proper facilities and infrastructure in place to meet the needs of the people here in South DeKalb. So I would say crime connects with our ability to have good schools and also thriving businesses. In the healthcare, we need to make sure that we have proper services to make sure that the people here in our community stay healthy. So I would say both of those are at the top of my priority as far as if I'm elected as a legislator, to make sure that we get the proper resources and funding and representation for our community.
Mr. Thibodeau, what is the top legislative priority for your community?
Well, I wouldn't really disagree with Mr. Williams. I would just put healthcare as a priority number one. We're trying to face this pandemic. District 90 is very a large minority of African Americans. The zip codes in District 90, if you look them up, have been some of the hardest hit zip codes in DeKalb County and Henry County and Rockdale. And so expanding Medicaid in the state will allow us to build our infrastructures for this ongoing response to the coronavirus, as well as the discrepancies in healthcare that existed in our community before. Black women dying in childbirth disproportionately, and facilities in our community shutting down because we don't have patients who can afford them because they're unemployed and lost their health care. As for crime, it is a large problem in our community, but I don't believe it's just about policing. It's about giving opportunities to people. It's about healthcare services in our community, because a lot of the violent crime that we see are between people who know each other, where we have issues in families and among social gatherings. And a lot of that is because we don't have proper mental health care or trauma response. And so, healthcare, but it's very tied into our crime, and crime needs to improve in order for our community to be prosperous.
Mr. Shealy, what about you? What is the most important legislative priority for your community? You've got 2 minutes.
Thank you. I have to slightly disagree with Mr. Williams and Mr. Thibodeau, but those were good answers, I would say. I would say there's not one, there's two things that are most important to our community. One is COVID relief. In our area, we have a lot of frontline workers who have been hit hard by the COVID pandemic. We need relief for these people. We need more money set aside for those people who have lost their job, who have lost their health care, who have lost their apartments, who have lost their home. We need to protect those people. We need to get more money in their pockets, and we need to do that right now. And the second thing is set-asides. We need set-asides. The system that we have right now does not work. The system of setting the budget at the state level does not work for District 90. We need something different. So if we look at DeKalb County, if we look at the LSD program, and if we look at Clayton County, if we look at their SLBE program, they have set-asides for local and small businesses. We need set-asides that comes from the state. So if we have any legislation, any money that comes down to the state that affects our area, that we should have a certain amount of set-asides for the people in the district. So we can start creating economic development and economic opportunities for the people in District 90. So this is one thing that we overlook, that we see that I see that is very important for our community. So again, what is the most important legislation for our area? One is COVID relief, especially for frontline workers. And the second is set-asides. For any money that comes down to our district, we should have set aside for local and small businesses in our community.
And Dan, can I add on, since I didn't take up my full 2 minutes?
I'll give you 15 seconds, sir, Mr. Williams.
I agree with what Greg said about the frontline workers, but also another group that's important is our senior citizens. We need to make sure they are protected in our community, both in DeKalb, Rockdale, and Henry County.
Thank you,
and
Mr.
so
Williams.
Make sure that happens.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Williams.
I agree with Mr. Williams as well. Great answer, Mr. Williams.
Mr. Thibodeau, we'll start this question with you, sir. Did you support the creation of the city of Stonecrest, and do you believe it is being governed effectively now?
I did support the creation of the city of Stonecrest. I was there with the Stonecrest Yes and the Stonecrest Now committees, educating the populace on the city of Stonecrest and how we set it up to run. I asked for and received the appointment as the chair of the Governor's Commission, heading the transitional government in Stonecrest. Okay, and we put together, and I worked with over 70 volunteers. I ran a group of 70 volunteers to help put together the initial plan for the governance of the city of Stonecrest. However, the Governor's Commission doesn't govern. The people who are elected into the office are the people who govern. And those people are the ones who make the decisions on how the city is run. And those are the people who make the appointments. And those are the people who award the contracts. I'm still involved with the city of Stonecrest, and I'm still proud that we have a city. And I'm glad that a lot of the progress that we've made, but we do have some improvements that could be made, but I don't see that as any different from the growing pains of any new city, whether it be Brookhaven, whether it be Milton, whether it be Dunwoody. It's not very different than the other growing pains. They're just exacerbated because I think there's a view in our community that, that people who look like us shouldn't be able to break off and run our own and take care of ourselves. They feel like maybe we should stay in line and not, branch out to take care of ourselves. But it wasn't even about that. It was about we not having representation for over 2 years, and the county government did nothing to alleviate that. And our community needed a solution. And Stonecrest was and is still that solution.
Thank you, Mr. Thibodeau. I appreciate that. Mr. Shealy, how about you? Did you support the creation of Stonecrest, and do you think it is being governed effectively now?
I agree with a lot of what Joe Thibodeau said. Our area needed representation, and a lot of times people look at us and think that we can't govern ourselves. So I agree. So it's not the way I want to lead and the way I want to govern. It's not about what Greg Shealy wants. It's what the people of District 90 want. So the people of District 90 voted yes to the city of Stonecrest. So if the people voted yes, then I agree with that, and I will champion their cause, and I will fight with them tooth and nail to get their will done. Now, I believe that we have a pretty good mayor in Jason Larry, who is a fraternity brother of mine. And I think there's a lot of things that we need to improve in the city of Stonecrest, because I live in the city of Stonecrest. But overall, I think that the will of the people was heard and it was done, and I support what the people want. There's changes that we can make over a period of time, and there's a lot of issues that we see in Dunwoody, Brookhaven, Tucker, all these other areas. We see issues, but when we see issues in our area, we try to exacerbate these things. But I believe that the leadership that we have right now will prevail, and we'll do good things in that area.
Mr. Williams, question to you. Did you support the creation of the city of Stonecrest, and do you believe it's being governed effectively now?
Now, Dan, everybody should know, including the other candidates on this panel, know that I was opposed to the creation of most of the cities in DeKalb County. Now, for both of these candidates, who I normally and typically get along with, both of these candidates talked about local government and local control. Now, the county government is run by minority African-American elected officials. The city of Atlanta is ran by African-American officials. So this notion about Black people or African-Americans not being able to govern, it's hogwash. The issue here was whether people had a legitimate choice or options to whether they could live in the city or not live in the city or had some other option. Now, the city of Stonecrest did not provide but one option. You either was in the city or you supported not being in the city. I believe that there should have been other options that allowed the citizens to vote on. Now, one of the things that happened in Stonecrest was that most of the people that voted in the election didn't really know what the boundaries were. They didn't even realize they were voting to be in the city that they lived in. And so I believe that that time that education was needed was one of the principal reasons why I opposed it. It was a rush to create a city out of necessity for local control, but the citizens didn't even know what the boundaries were. And a lot of them don't know what was in the charter, including the elected officials. So now, fast forward to now, you have them wanting to change the charter because there were a lot of provisions in the charter that none of the elected officials were really aware of. They want to add a police force now. They said 4 years ago that they were only going to provide 3 services. Now they want to talk about adding a police force and other services. And for the record, I do not live in Stonecrest. I live in unincorporated DeKalb County. And also for the record, Joel Thibodeau should know publicly that he's on the payroll of the city of Stonecrest. So he has an interest in his answer and response that you gave.
All right, you're first of all, thank you for that response. You are over the 2 minutes. Since you did say that, I did want to give Mr. Thibodeau a chance to respond. Mr. Thibodeau, I'll give you 30 seconds.
Dan, can I respond after that?
Sure, I'll give you 30 seconds after Mr. Thibodeau.
Well, it's no secret that I'm under contract as the internal auditor for the city of Stonecrest, have been for the past 2 years. Mr. Williams knows that. He's been open records requesting all of my payroll and my records from the DCSD as well as from the city of Stonecrest since Stonecrest passed. So, he probably knows my personnel file better than I do. But yes, I am an internal auditor by trade, and the city council approved in open meeting my contract. And I've also turned over to the city council a recommendation that they hire in a new full-time auditor, not because I was running, but because that was now in the best interest of the city.
Thank you.
And I've also informed them that upon winning this election, that I could no longer be under contract. And it's all open. It's always conducted in open meetings. There's no secrets here.
Thank you for that response. Mr. Shealy, you wanted to add something as well, 30 seconds.
Yes, a lot of what Mr. Williams said, I agree with. I mean, he was dead on. The only thing I disagree with is the people have spoken. And if the people were unaware of the boundary lines, then I understand, but it's the goal of the people to educate themselves on if they're in or if they're out. But in terms of legislating and being a politician for the people, my thing is the will of the people. It doesn't have to be something that Greg Shealy likes. I don't have to agree with everything, but the people have spoken for it. Okay. So that's the reason why I can support it.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Shealy. And since we're doing kind of a rotation, I'll start the next question with you, Mr. Shealy. What is your position on creating new cities in DeKalb County, specifically the new cities of Vista Grove and Greenhaven? 2 minutes.
Vista Grove and that is the firestorm. That is the firestorm. And Dan, thank you for asking this question. My answer is, again, it's not what Greg Shealy wants. It's what the people in the community want. If the people in the community champions a cause, I want to be the legislator who stands up and fight for the people, regardless if I like it or not. Now, I will tell you, in 2018, I knocked on 1,457 doors. And I would say that a majority of the people did not want Greenhaven. They did not want cityhood for Greenhaven, right? So what I would say is, if the people don't want it, then Greg Shealy does not want it. But I do not want to go against the will of the people in District 90. And again, this does not happen in Buckhead. This will not happen in Roswell. In other areas on the north side of town, the people champion what the legislators should take to the legislative body. And I want to do the same thing. So I want to take a blank slate on if Greenhaven is good for the people or if Greenhaven is bad for the people. But I want to hear what the people have to say. So once I'm elected, the first thing I want to do is have town hall meetings. I want to have meetings in community centers, in business communities and all over the county and get a sense and a tenor of what the people want, so I can champion it up or if I can champion it down. So I take a blank view of Greenhaven, and I want to hear from what the people in the community actually want.
Thank you. Mr. Williams, do you support creating new cities in DeKalb County, specifically Vista Grove and Greenhaven?
As I mentioned in my previous answer, Dan, I oppose most of the creation of the new cities in DeKalb County. Now, Greg just mentioned the thing about the cities being legislators being having a blank slate. One of the responsibilities of a legislator is not just to listen to his constituents, but also to inform and educate them. So, as I have been doing since 2014, I have been researching the issue on cityhood, economics, and those things that relate to cityhood. Now, cities do not create economic development because we already have 13 cities in DeKalb County, and I can number a handful of them that look like Shack Tank, including Stone Mountain, the city of Stone Mountain, and I don't want to name too many other ones, not Lithonia, but Pine Lake. They're small cities. They've been around for a long time. There's no booming going on in those cities. And one of the things they talked about in 2014 is that cities create economic development. And I was educating the public that cityhood does not mean economic development, because you had City of Atlanta on one side of the Martin Luther King Boulevard Drive, where it looked like a desert, isolated community. And on the other side of the divide of Martin Luther King Boulevard, you had economic development. So just because you have a city don't mean that you're going to have economic development. It is part of the legislator's responsibility to educate and inform its constituents. So you cannot just go in there with a blank slate and say, I'm just going to listen to them. Yes, that's part of your job is to listen, but you should also be prepared to educate, research, and inform them of some of the principles in which you as a person stand on. So if they agree on having the city and you know that is totally not in the interest in the long run, then it behooves you as a legislator to voice your opinion based on your principles.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Thank you for your answer. Mr. Thibodeau, what is your position on creating new cities in DeKalb County, specifically Vista Grove and Greenhaven?
For one, cityhood is about one, local control of resources, and two, how people want to be dealt with on the local level by their local government. Okay. That's what cityhood is about. It's about local control of local resources. It's not about creating economic development. It's about managing their community resources in order to inspire and enhance the ability to create for companies to come in and invest. As far as what do I feel about new cities in DeKalb, this is how I feel. Very simple. If you have already voted to create a municipality and failed, I'm sorry. You lost when you had your voice. If you have not had an opportunity to vote and there is a viable bill that you can vote on, I support people having a vote, uniting, and then moving forward. This community is divided. If it weren't divided, then we wouldn't be talking about this on this show. This community wants an effective local government, whether it come from the county or whether it come from a new city. But the only way they're going to get that done is if they unite and work together, educate each other, and come together on a plan. The only way to do that and to know what the will of the people really is to vote. Hasn't that been plainly put out there over the last year? The vote is the people's voice. As a representative, I don't have a right to make that decision for them to silence one group while giving another group voice because that's my opinion. They have a right to decide for themselves. And then whatever that choice is, I'm behind them.
Dan, can I weigh in?
30 seconds, and then we're going to get to a reader question.
Okay. A lot of what Mr. Thibodeau said, almost everything what Mr. Thibodeau said, I agree. I met Mr. Williams back in 2018. Very bright, very intelligent guy. And I think we agree about 90% of the time. The thing that I have to say that I disagree with is I'm a Democratic purist. it's not my job to exert my will on the people. It's the will of the people and listening to what the people in our community want. And it's not for me to tell them exactly what they need. And this happens all too often in Black communities. All too often in Black community, we look at the politician as he's the savior and he knows it all. But when we look at District 90, there's a lot of smart, intelligent, well-educated people, and their voice needs to be heard. And if their voice needs to be heard, I want to be the guy.
Dan, I just
to allow
Thank
their
you,
voice.
Mr. Shealy. All right, we're a little over your time. Mr. Williams, you want to jump in real quick, and then we got to get to a new line of questions.
Listen, this is a very important issue.
Sure, Mr. Williams.
As far as Stonecrest, local control, we don't have, the citizens of Stonecrest do not have local control. They have an incinerator that's being built in their community that they do not have any control over. They had a cell tower placed in their neighborhood they had no control over. They had an expressway built between their communities they have no control over. So to say that you have this because you have a local government does not give those citizens in Stonecrest any more local control than they had when they was with the county. So it's a
Mr. Williams, in the first year of the existence of the city of Stonecrest, a landowner who owned land at the corner of Evans Mill and Salem Road in the middle of a residential subdivision had a by right to develop a gas station on that land. We fought them back 10 years ago, but this time they made up their mind they were going to do it. The citizens complained. The city spent tax dollars to purchase the land from the landowner so that it became public land to develop into a park. That is the example of local control that never could have happened at the level of the county at the time that we formed the city. The citizens were able to impress upon City Hall that the city had to invest in order to save that neighborhood, and the city did.
Thank you, Mr.
So don't
Thibodeau.
tell me local control doesn't exist in Stonecrest.
I appreciate your passion. I would respectfully ask that the candidates try not to talk over each other because we do have a lot of ground to cover. Mr. Williams, since you were cut off, I'd like to give you 20 more seconds to finish your answer, and then we do have to move on. Mr. Williams?
All I can say is that the soccer field that they were promised in 2017 never was built. So all of those promises that the advocates of cityhood made in 2017 have not happened, and the citizens are still waiting on all of those promises that were made.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Okay, Mr. Thibodeau, we have a question from a viewer. Atlanta Nix asks, would the candidates support redistricting reform that would ensure transparency of the redistricting process to ensure constituents have insight into and the ability to participate in the process? 2 minutes, sir.
Well, I do. I want to dive deeply into the reapportionment process. I do believe in a nonpartisan committee or a third party to assist with drawing out the districts so that they are not gerrymandered. This is a very important for this particular session. We just proved that the state is blue. We proved it through the presidential election. We proved it through the 2 Senate elections. However, at the same time, we maintain a Republican majority in our congressional delegation, state Senate, and state House. That's because of gerrymandering. And so we have to get in and we, as far as public participation in the process, I mean, we're set up along census lines, but I do believe that when we're looking at pulling together communities of interest so that you don't have one street in a subdivision in one district and another street in a subdivision in another district, I do believe that community input, so that community of interests that a district could represent, I believe that that's where people can have input and should always have transparency to the entire process, whether they are part of the decision making or not. Transparency should always be there.
Mr. Williams, would you support redistricting reform that would ensure the transparency of the redistricting process and ensure that constituents have the ability to participate in that process?
Dan, yes, I would. In fact, I've always protected the rights of the citizens to participate in their political process. I'm glad to hear Joel talk about citizen participation and them being able to show that they have a say in how district lines and border lines are being drawn, because that did not happen in the cityhood process. In fact, we talk about citizens have self-determination, but when you force them into a boundary line where they had no say in it, and the only choice they had was to vote for it or against it, that is not democracy. That is not self-determination. So one of the problems or impact that will happen if we reform the reapportionment boundaries now is that I agree with Joel. Our district is so gerrymandered now that if you straighten it out, a lot of the elected officials will lose their positions because they will no longer be in the district that they're currently serving. So we're going to have this process is going to have to be done delicately, because right now our district, District 90, lies in DeKalb, Henry, and Rockdale. It's one of the strangest districts that we have in Georgia. And so we have to be careful as to how this district is reapportioned, because we may not, whoever is elected may not be in that district after the reapportionment happens.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Mr. Shealy, would you support redistricting reform that would ensure the transparency of that process and ensure constituents have the ability to participate in that process?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I think I just have to echo what Mr. Williams and Mr. Thibodeau said. We need a citizen board on both sides of the aisle, citizens who can oversee the process of redistricting our area. So since over the last 20 years, red mapping in terms of what the Republicans have done has worked effectively in their favor, and they have gerrymandered our state to the 10th degree. So when we look at the election and we do the research on the state of Georgia, we are a center blue state. However, the 60% of our legislators are Republicans. Why? It's because of red mapping, not having transparency when they're drawing the districts every 10 years. And we need a lot more transparency. We need more people at the table when redistricting lines are drawn. So a lot of politicians, as Mr. Williams said, may be scared of the process because they may be losing their spot. But we need some equal representation that mimics the legislative body of the state.
Thank you so much. We'll start. We have another audience question. We got a really nice turnout for this, so thank you to everyone who's watching this and participating and getting informed about these candidates. These local elections are really important. So we'll start with Mr. Williams. Mr. Williams, what are your plans for economic development in your community if you're elected? 2 minutes.
There are two major issues that I addressed in my last forum that needs to happen. First of all, we need to incentivize the financial institution through legislation, because state regulate the financial institution at the state level, to offer low-level interest rate loans to the businesses in our community. That needs to be enforced with the Civil Rights Act. We have a serious issue in our community where our businesses, both at the commercial level and the private level, personal level, are being charged higher interest rates. We need to stop that. It's not fair, and we need to make sure that civil rights are enforced. Other thing that needs to happen, in order for us to have real economic development, if you know anything about economics, you have to control the resources and you have to control the distribution. If you do not control the resources or the distribution, you are not going to create high wage jobs. Our community is suffering because we do not have high wage jobs other than a lot of government jobs. And so we need major industry. We don't need Amazon to skip over DeKalb County. We need Amazon to land in DeKalb County. We need some of the major industries in the metro Atlanta area to locate and generate real wage jobs in DeKalb County. So I want to create legislation that will give more incentive for businesses to come into our community and create real wage jobs that will motivate and create economic development in our community.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Mr. Shealy, what is your plan for economic development in your community if you're elected?
Oh, great. Then economic development is what I've done. And it's what I've done over the last 17 years. I've been an entrepreneur for the last 17 years, and I've hired over 100 people and contractors. And I've brought in over $30 million into the community, into my company. I believe the system that we have now does not work for District 90. It does not work. So the way it's set up right now, there's a pot of money at the state, and it's supposed to trickle down to different areas in our different districts in our state. But it does not work for us. We need a plan that works from the bottom up. We need to work with businesses, organizations, and individuals that they could tap into funding at the local level, at the state level, and even at the federal level. This is what I have done for over the last 17 years for my company. And this is what I've done and have mentored other companies to have done the same thing. We need to tap into funding so we can start developing these businesses, individuals, and organizations so we can bring funding back to our area. So if there's any money that's coming down from the federal level that comes into our area, we should have set-asides similar to the local small business enterprise that ensures that at least 20% of it will go to a company like Joe Thibodeau, Ed Williams Company, or even Dan's company. If that money is coming down to our area, we should get a piece of the pie. Right now, that happens on the north side of town. That happens in other areas, but we don't have legislation, or we don't have the will and the fight for that to come down to our areas.
Thank you so much, Mr. Thibodeau. What is your plan for economic development if you are elected?
Well, economic development doesn't start at the state level. Economic development starts at the local level. What you have to do is you have to work with the local communities, their local governments, whether it be city or county, and you have to find out what their plans are. What resources that they feel that they have to offer to the marketplace, whether it be their workforce, whether it be land that's available, whether it be infrastructure. And then you assist those communities by liaisoning with the governor's office of economic development and the resources at the state capitol in order to help those communities invest in themselves and get ready for economic development. Sharon Springs out there where Facebook has landed, it didn't just spring up out of the ground. The people at the local level worked with the state economic development department, and they put in the right infrastructure. They put in the broadband. They put in the transportation. They put in those things, all budgeted by the state through GDOT and through the technology authority. And so you have to know how to put the resources together, working with the local government who know how they want their communities to look, who know what kind of businesses they want to attract. Henry County may want one thing, Rockdale another. South DeKalb wants transformative regional development to create jobs, but we don't have the water and sewer infrastructure to even have the hookups if we attracted a large company to somewhere in South DeKalb. We have to have that infrastructure investment. We've got to get those dollars from the state down here. And so it's about regional transformative investment in South DeKalb, technological and transportation infrastructure buildup in Henry and Rockdale counties so that they can determine how they want to grow in the future. Local government starts economic development.
Dan, can I jump in?
Real quick, 20 seconds.
Okay, 20 seconds. When we see a road being paved in our community, who's paving the lines? I mean, I'm sorry, who's painting the lines inside the street? When we see a local a state health care building being retrofitted, who's putting in the windows? The thing is, we need set-asides, and we need technical support for local businesses, organizations, and individuals to be able to tap into that funding and get a piece of the pie. And then it can be done. I'm telling you, because I'm living proof sitting right here, because I used to be a teacher 17 years ago, and now I'm the guy who does that type of work.
I do appreciate your passion. We do have to move on to another question, though. Thank you so much. Mr. Thibodeau, we'll start with you, sir. What is your vision for public transportation in South DeKalb? 2 minutes.
Well, my ultimate vision is to see a monorail down I-20 down to Stonecrest. My ultimate vision is also to see a shuttle to go nonstop from Stonecrest to the airport to connect the east side directly with the airport. Other than that, I want to see expanded bus routes in areas that we need them. I think one of the things I can compliment Dr. Williams on is for his work in, laying out what kind of transportations it needs that we have. But DeKalb County's been paying into the system as long as MARTA's existed. And South DeKalb, in particular Southeast DeKalb, has been woefully neglected. Our density does not sit in high-rise apartment buildings like they do in other areas of the county. It's sitting in extended stay hotels. It's sitting in rentals that house 3 and 4 families at a time. We know that we need the public transportation to get people to the jobs they need until we can build the jobs here. And we still got to get them there. So I want to see more robust investment by MARTA in Southeast DeKalb. The people in Rockdale, they don't care that much for MARTA. So I want to see Greta expand their routes into Henry and Rockdale counties, their express routes that link them up with the downtown and Peachtree Quarter areas as well. We can do smart transit here. It doesn't have to be a lot. It can be BRT. We have to look at that. It does not have to be heavy rail. There are new systems being developed all over the world that are cost effective and can get the job done. And so that's how I see transportation in our future. We do not need to build extensively more freeways. We can get it done with transit.
Mr. Williams, what is your vision for public transportation in South DeKalb?
And in 1971, DeKalb County voted to create MARTA. We have been paying into the MARTA transit system for over 50 years. My position is that DeKalb County citizens deserve to get their fair share. I have filed a lawsuit that's pending in the Supreme Court of Georgia right now about the sales tax. The people's voices should be heard through a referendum as to whether we remain with MARTA or we get train service down South DeKalb in South DeKalb. I have been working on that relentlessly for 2 years. I will not give up. I will fight all the way to the United States Supreme Court if I have to. Now, we need our fair share in South DeKalb, in Rockdale, and Henry County. I'm gonna fight. If nobody else is gonna fight, I will stand up myself and fight that battle. So if you're looking for somebody who will fight, and if I'm the only person standing up, I'm gonna fight all the way to the last person that's standing for your interests and our interests here in South DeKalb, Rockdale, and Henry County. It is unfair what MARTA and all the GDOT is doing to the people in our community. I will speak out about it. I will not walk away from it, and you will know where I stand. I have been doing that since 2014 on a host of issues. You can Google me all over the internet, and I've been speaking out. I'm not afraid to speak out. And that's what I would do for you if I'm elected as a representative for District 9.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Mr. Shealy, what is your vision for public transportation in South DeKalb?
I think I'm going to echo a couple of things that Mr. Thibodeau and Mr. Williams said. I see there's a strong need for heavy rail or a light rail over the I-20 corridor. And I think we need shuttle service. There's no reason in the world that we don't have shuttle service from our district to the airport, from Rockdale to the airport, from Henry County to the airport. One of the things that stymies our economic development is the velocity of money. So when we look at different areas, different parts of town, we look at Buckhead and Roswell and Sandy Springs. One of the advantages they have is great transportation, which increases the velocity of money, which means that money turns over hands from one entity to another. When we increase our public transportation, this will be a moot point. And again, we've been paying into to MARTA since 1971. And our representation has, I don't know what to say about our representation, but something needs to change. So when they created the new commission, I think it's called the ATL, the new commission that they have, we don't have that much representation. So the problem is that we're not at the table, and this is really going to hurt our community.
Thank you, Mr. Shealy. And
Dan, can I add one more thing, because it's in the news about Dorville and Dunwoody. 30 seconds. 30 seconds. They complained about MARTA cutting the bus service. I filed a lawsuit against MARTA as far as the 70 bus routes that they cut. They never had a public hearing They never had a martyr board vote on the issue. They cut 70 bus routes all throughout the whole system. This is what we're talking about. We are not have proper representation regards to public transportation. Now you have cities complaining about the same thing. You have Dunwoody and Doraville complaining about how MARTA cut services without having public hearings or MARTA board vote. And this is what we are demanding.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Shealy, we have a couple of questions left. If y'all, we might go a little over 7 o'clock. Is that okay with everyone? Do you mind if we go over time? Is that fine? Okay,
That's
great.
fine.
Mr. Shealy, what role do you believe you can play as a legislator in addressing racial inequality in Georgia? And can you be specific? What legislative initiatives or oversight would you propose?
One of the things that I was very passionate about, and it has already passed, is House Bill, I think it's 426, the hate crime bill. And I think that was a good bill that actually increased the penalties for hate crimes. So the thing is, we see a legislator in Gwinnett County who's trying to roll back some of the progress that we made in terms of the hate crime and the voter protection bill. And I think that we need to educate our community on what is being done so we can galvanize around a common thing in terms of hate crime, voter protection, economic development. And I think I'm the person who can champion that. If we don't see that there are people out there who look to stymie the progress that we made over the last year in the last legislative body, we can go back to when we had very little protection in terms of voters' rights and hate crime. So I hope to be someone who can champion those causes and be a voice for the people in our community.
Mr. Thibodeau, what role do you believe that you could play as a legislator in addressing racial inequality in Georgia, and could you be specific and tell us what legislative initiatives or oversight you would propose?
Well, one, I believe that the state should do what it can, both in budgetary outlay as well as policy, to increase access, Black access to capital. Minority business people with new industries coming to the state every day, because we lack access to capital, we're not able to capitalize on the ground floor because the buy-in is too high. And so we have to, either consolidate money or go in with wealthier non-Black partners in order to, capitalize on some of the opportunities. So Black access to capital is humongous at addressing systemic racism. As far as in criminal justice, I still want to look at taking out qualified immunity, so that if a police officer does something behind the badge that would be considered a crime if he weren't behind a badge, that officer would stand trial like any other citizen. I also believe that we have to look at cash bail and how that disproportionately affects minorities. Cash bail for misdemeanor offenses, and people spending weeks at a time in jail, losing their jobs, losing their livelihoods because they don't have $500 to $1,000 to put bail up. And there's a number of young Black families that just devastates. And so those are two things I believe legislatively in the first year that I can at least put on the table for us to start working on.
Thank you. Mr. Williams, what role do you believe that you could play as a legislator in addressing racial inequality in Georgia? And if you would, please be specific about what legislative initiatives or oversight you would propose.
First of all, as Greg talked about, I'm glad he talked about education as far as this matter is concerned. Because like I had mentioned in the cityhood thing, one of the jobs of a legislator is also to educate his constituents. In the Georgia Constitution, Article 1 and Article 2 talk about citizens' rights. The legislators and the citizens need to know what their rights are. In order for you to protect your rights, you got to know that you have rights. One of the things I have experienced in the last 2 years and being in the court system with the Supreme Court case that I filed against DeKalb County and MARTA is that it's an uphill battle for the common person, common man, to have some kind of justice in the system. So whether we're talking about criminal justice or immunity, We have to have in the Attorney General's office an advocate for the people. Right now, the Attorney General represents the state. We need an advocate for the people that the citizens can go to act on their behalf. It's an uphill battle for a common person like me to go to the Court of Appeals or the Superior Court and try to get equal justice. This is what we're talking about, equal justice under the law. And so we need to change the laws to make the courts more accessible to the citizens. One of the things I did this 2 years ago was I filed a complaint, which is telling the courts that they must have hearings in order to determine whether a court cost should be paid. They cannot just deny court costs against citizens. So I'm in favor of citizens having rights. Education should be part of that. But we must have courts in the Attorney General office having an advocate for the people. The people, the government should be representing the people and their interests, not just protecting themselves with immunity.
Thank you so much. All right, so we're gonna wrap up. We're gonna take one more viewer question, and then we're gonna give each candidate a couple of minutes to make a final statement. Mr. Shealy, we will start with you on this one. Do you believe there's adequate healthcare access in your district? If not, how would you address that lack of healthcare both in your district and in other parts of Georgia?
No, I don't think there's adequate health care in my district. I can tell you about 10 years ago when I had to get my own personal health care, it was an event, to say the least. It cost me $1,500 a month, and that was before Obamacare. But after Obamacare, it went down to about $430 a month. But then, the thing I want to say is, the issue of healthcare and many of the issues that are plaguing our community evolves around economic development. If we had more economic development, we'd have more jobs. We had more jobs, we'd have more people who have access to healthcare. Our biggest issue in DeKalb, in District 90, in DeKalb, Rockdale, Henry County, is a lack of economic development. And everything, all roads lead back to that. When we address the problem of economic development, when we show the people how to be self-sustained, as we see in other areas, then this will be a moot point. It will be a blip on the radar. And this is something that we need to address right away. Now, there are certain things that we need to do. I believe that if we had a single payer plan in the state of Georgia, that would help immensely. For some reason, I don't know why the Republicans are fighting that tooth and nail, but that is something that we need, and it would help the people in terms of in Georgia entirely, and especially in our district. But none of these issues will be solved without a plan for economic development.
Thank you, Mr. Shealy. Mr. Williams, do you believe that there's adequate access to health care in your district? And if not, how would you address that lack of health care both in your district and in other parts of Georgia?
I do not believe there's adequate health care in District 90. I believe the state should put more money in a grading health system. I believe it should expand the Medicaid. And I believe it should also work with the EPA to make sure that our water is safe, our rivers are safe, and that the food that we eat is more safe. Now, Greg just talked about economic development. There are certain things, and we're running for the state legislature. There are certain things that we count on the government to do. And that is to protect our food, to make sure our water is clean, and to make sure that we have adequate support services for those people who cannot afford private hospitals. We depend on the government to do that. So we need to make sure if we're elected, if any one of us is elected, to make sure that we have laws that are enforced to protect the citizens from having environmental hazards in their communities. Right now we have water spills all over DeKalb County all the time. We need to make sure that we have proper enforcement of these laws that we have on the book and that somebody is held accountable. And so I would make sure that these laws that we already have on our book are enforced. And when they're not, I would be an advocate to speak out about it. I would not be silent like a lot of our other elected leaders. I will speak out about it. And that's one thing you can depend on Ed Williams. He will speak out about it.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Mr. Thibodeau, Do you believe there is adequate access to health care in your district? And if not, how would you address that both in your district and in the state of Georgia?
There's absolutely not adequate health care in our district or most other places in Georgia. There's not adequate access to health care. I can't tell you how far I have to drive just to find an immediate care center. And as far as an immediate care center that caters to children, like a children's health care center, I got to drive out of my district and, to the other side of the county to find that. I've got a hospital that is currently below standard, in Stonecrest, and I don't have access to the same types of healthcare options that I would by driving to another part of town. The issue is expansion of Medicaid. What holds a lot of healthcare services and healthcare providers open is the income that they can get from people who normally would not be able to afford healthcare, but who get sick or who want well care so that they don't get sick. But those people can't be seen. They have to wait until they have to go to the emergency room to be seen. That drives healthcare costs up, and it diminishes our access to healthcare. So expanding healthcare statewide, expanding Medicaid statewide solves our problem or assists in solving our problem here in District 90. It also assists in getting rural hospitals back open for the same reasons. When you have unemployed populations who don't have healthcare coverage, then they need some type of government assistance in order to provide that. Expansion of Medicaid does that. This is about solutions. We have to invest in our infrastructure. If you want to just keep complaining and fining people over and over again because the infrastructure fails and we don't have the proper investment, then you do that. But you go and find the investment in order to fix what's wrong. You can't just keep finding targets. You have to offer solutions.
Thank you, Mr. Thibodeau. Well, this has been a wonderful, spirited discussion. Mr. Williams, did we lose you, Mr. Williams? We might have lost Mr. Williams. Well, we apparently lost Mr. Williams. I'm very sorry about that. We'll try to if we can get him to send us a final statement via email, we can add it to the story. Patrick Saunders is going to be writing a story about this event for Decaturish.com. He'll be doing a summary. If you did not see your candidate that you were interested in hearing from today, please know that we are going to try to find a way. It is a very tight election window. The elections are February 9th, but we are going to try to find a way to get everyone's voice heard, whether that is via letter to the editors, so you can all know a little bit more about your candidates. I'm going to give each candidate that's remaining 2 minutes to make a final statement, and we will start with Mr. Thibodeau.
Good evening, District 90. Thanks for having me into your homes. Thanks for being interested enough to tune into this program and educate yourselves on this race and the candidates in it. I want to thank my fellow candidates for showing up as well, understanding how important it is to address our citizens and allow them to make a great choice. And that's what you have in front of you, a choice. You have a choice to make if you want someone who has deep experience in government, deep experience in corporate, and a deep care for the community. My fingers are on the pulse of what's needed. I have a deep understanding because of my master's in public policy that I gained from Andrew Young School of Public Policy at Georgia State University. But I didn't start there. I started at the Cab Technical Institute as an adult learner, and that's where I got my associate's degree. I went on to DeVry, just like a lot of other people in our community, and got an associate and got a bachelor's degree there, and then worked my way up, worked my way through management, changed over and started serving in our government, offering those same skills in the service of the people. I do the people's work every day in and day out. And, I'm not, and it's really a fulfilling piece of work that I do at the school district and at the city of Stonecrest. But what I really want to do is offer the full capacity of what I bring to the table to the people in District 90, to champion them in the reapportionment battle, to champion them for healthcare, champion them for criminal justice reform, champion them for economic development, sustainable economic development that'll transform our community. I've got what it takes. I hope that you see I've got what it takes. Send me to represent you for District 90 to the Georgia Legislature. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thibodeau. Mr. Williams, are you back with us, sir?
Yes, I got disconnected somehow for some reason.
Well, I'm glad you could rejoin us. We are doing our final statements. You have 2 minutes to make a final statement, sir.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Thank you all out there in the 10 hospitals closed in recent years because of budget cuts and other things. So we need to make sure that the state level that we pay attention to the healthcare needs of citizens here in the District 90 and in the state of Georgia. My name is Ed Williams, and for those who do not know me, I have been advocating and fighting for the interests of the people for the last 6 years. I do not get paid what I do. I'm a professor by trade. I teach at the college level. But all the things that I do for the community, I do on the behalf of the interests of the people. I do not get paid for it. That means I love what I do. You do not have to pay me to be an advocate for the protection of the rights of the citizen. It's in me. It has always been in me to protect the rights of the citizen. So anytime you have an issue relating to whether the government has control or citizens should have a say, I'm going to side on the rights of the citizens. I'm always going to do that. So you're going to always know where Ed Williams stands. You can trust me. You can depend on me. And you know I will fight for you. I fought good fight against cityhood off the cab. I fought the good fight against cityhood in other parts of DeKalb County. Not all of them successful, but I fought for those good fights. I have fought all the way to the Georgia Supreme Court and won. And nobody paid me to do it. And so, you know, I've also advocated for ethics reform in DeKalb County. I helped revise and help get past the new ethics law that was passed. I did not get paid for that. I did that in the interest of the people. I'm not on the payroll of the county. I'm not on the payroll of Stonecrest. I'm not on the payroll of the state government. I have never worked for the state. So you know that if you go to vote,
Thank you. You passed your time, Mr. Williams. Thank you. Mr. Shealy, we'll let you have the last word. 2 minutes. You're muted, Mr. Shealy.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine, sir.
Thank you, Dan, and staff at the Decaturish, all the people who logged in today, the people of District 90, and to Joe and Ed Williams for being here as well. I thank you for hosting this forum. Again, my name is Greg Shealy. I'm an entrepreneur, a father, a husband, and I have a passion for my community. I'm a former educator in the DeKalb County school system, but for the last 17 years, like I said, I had a business in our community. Over this time, my company has hired over 100 people and contractors, and we have been awarded numerous contracts to benefit our community. So why do I tell you this? There's no secrets about it, of what I believe. Our district needs more economic development. We need more economic development, and we need it now. And have anyone out there ever noticed that our district lacks a thriving community, commercial business base? There's a reason for that, and I have a plan. I've created a blueprint for my company, and I can create a blueprint for our community. I feel that I'm the candidate that is most prepared to bridge the gap between smart legislation and economic development in District 90. And once I'm elected, my top 3 priorities will be: 1 is economic development, 2 is COVID relief, especially for frontline workers, and 3 is voter protection reform. I believe this wholeheartedly in my heart. I ask you to send me to the House legislation. Again, my name is Greg Shealy, and I humbly ask for your vote.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone. First of all, everyone who's here, we might have lost. Mr. Williams again. Oh, there he is. Thank you to everyone who's here for your interest in public service. It's very important. Thank you to everyone. We had a great turnout for this episode. Really one of the best shows we've ever done for our turnout. So to all of you, pat yourselves on the back for being interested in local government. The election is on February 9th. Early voting has started. If you need to figure out if you're in this district, if you need to see a ballot, go to the Georgia Secretary of State's My Voter page and look up your polling place information. DeKalb Votes is where you can get local information from the DeKalb Board of Registration and Elections, and DecaturishVotes.com is where you can find all of our elections coverage. Patrick Saunders, one of our reporters, will be writing up a summary of today's forum for people to read. If you didn't see your candidate that you were interested in hearing from today, I do apologize. We were working under some time constraints. We're trying to get everyone involved. I will reach out to them again. I will give folks an opportunity to send a letter to the editor and possibly some other things, just so people get a chance to see them and hear from them, because people need to pay attention to this race. It's a House race. People might be a little worn out because we just had a huge election in the fall and in January. So don't get election fatigue, y'all. These local elections are some of the most important elections you will ever vote in. So with that, I will thank all of you for joining us. I will bid you all a good evening, and we will see you again on Wednesday with a guest of some kind. I don't know. I haven't figured that out, but I never do until a day or two before. So next Wednesday, 6 o'clock. We'll see you then. Have a good week. Bye, everybody.